Excellent. Well, I hope you've enjoyed all of the videos thus far and all of the work that you've seen so far in my portfolio. This should be the final piece in the portfolio, my walkthrough video. And for this one, I'm going to be doing a short walkthrough of my road assignment, actually, because I feel like it's one that I made the most decisions for, I suppose, if that makes any sense. It's one that I spent a lot of time thinking about, and that a lot of the stuff that I did in it is very specifically thought out. And so I thought that would be, a good piece to do for this sort of walkthrough through and sort of talk about my decision making process and really go through this step by step because it's also a rather linear piece, unlike say maybe my e-poem or something like that. And so it's easier to go through step by step and just talk about the process and talk about how I thought of it as more of a building project. Rather than maybe my e-poem, which is more, simultaneously lots of lines of things going on, which is a bit harder to talk about. So I'm going to just step through this video step by step. I'm going to be switching between the video and, Camtasia, talking about the editing tricks I used and the editing processes that I used, talking about, my clip selection, audio selection, and all of that. And so we can just start the video here. And you can see.
The Road is an overwhelmingly negative and apocalyptic story.
All right. Hopefully, I don't take too long to go through this, but I'm going to be stopping it every once in a while just to look at this. So first, a lot of stuff is happening here, actually. So you can see the video in the background. That's actually part of the stock footage that comes with Camtasia. And so, in these libraries, you can go and they have a whole bunch of themes that they've actually, preloaded into itself. So I selected the Calling Lights theme for the backgrounds that look like the falling rain almost. I thought it was appropriate. It looked like precipitation almost as you would expect in maybe the road with all of the snow and everything. And I like the colors too. I tried to go for more of an orange color scheme for a lot of it, just because I like orange, I suppose. And so, it fit well with that. And you can see here, also with the music, I chose a song named Homeward by Alan Wake. Yeah, I chose that because it's a song that I suppose can sound both happy and sad, depending on what context you've put it in. So in the beginning here, immediately opening with this sort of negative statement, it sort of puts the song, in more of a negative, downtrodden frame of mind. And so, what I love about this song, though, is as soon as you start thinking about it positively, though, it starts to sound positive. And so that's why I picked this song, so that, when I was, transitioning from talking about the road as a sad story into a happy story, I wouldn't have to change audio, worry about anything like that. It would simply fit the mood as is. And then finally, the last piece on this still here, is the actual text that I used. And so you saw the sort of interesting text that I used, or the interesting text method I used, which is to...
The Road is an overwhelmingly negative and apocalyptic story.
As you can see, you have all the text pop in word by word. That one took a bit more time to do in the actual editing process, and so I won't go through that, or I will go through that, but I didn't use it too many times in the actual video itself. Simply because it was such a difficult thing to actually do it. It was a time-consuming process to finish it. And so you can see here, now that I've pulled up my road inside Camtasia itself, I actually did this as a series of text boxes. And so you can see with this first one here, which is the fade in one, so only the word the is actually loaded in. And then for the second text box that you can see here, I've loaded in the road, and then it builds onto the road is. And so I add one word at a time in this, which allows all the text to pop in one word at a time. And so it creates a good visual effect, and it looks very nice on screen. But it's also very time-consuming to load these out, especially for longer quotes and longer things. So I didn't end up using this too often, except for when I was really trying to emphasize something. And so this, just right off the bat, I wanted it to be a big, bold statement. Clearly I was not going for subtlety with this one. And so I was able to do that. And additionally, I was able to change individual words inside of the text itself. So you can see that overwhelmingly in there is a larger font, and also is, a deeper, brighter, more vibrant orange than the rest of it. And so that's a lot to cover, I suppose, just for the first 8 seconds of this. But it also makes a lot of the rest of this, or it explains how I did a lot of the rest of this essay. So I'll be cutting it to the next section. So having covered that, I wanted to move to the next section. This is a visual effect I used quite a lot in this video itself as well, and it was inspired from watching some of the other videos where people did stuff similar to this, but not exactly like this. So what I would do is I found a nice copy of The Road online. I think it was provided. It was provided by some online provider. And I was able to just go through and take individual screenshots of pages of the book that way, in this very nice, computerized font. And so what I would do is I would find quotes that I thought really, symbolized what I was going for. In this case, I was going for, quotes that tried to emphasize the road as a negative story, as a story that taught sadness and things like that. And so I went through and I found quotes that sort of supported that. And what I would do is I would take a picture of the page, and using the pan and zoom feature, I could actually just zoom in on individual segments here and then go over the quote individually, very slowly, sort of emphasizing what it had to say. And so for this one, you can see, zooming on just this one quote, you can go through it slowly and really internalize it word by word. And it provides a good emphasis for, what quote you're trying to go for here. And then there's an individual fade out. And then it pops straight over into the next one. And I think that also creates a nice emphasis. A lot of the tricks I use here are really going for emphasis on these sorts of things. And I think that's important because, especially with these sort of shorter assignments, it's important to try to pack a lot into them. And so, picking good quotes that sort of support this. So on that first one that you saw, that quote here, it's packed with a lot of good words like fear and death camp and whatnot. And so it's important to sort of, pack words, especially when you're going for, I suppose a more appeal to pathos than, maybe logos or ethos or anything like that. And so this quote ends here on this can you, which this is a motif that we see throughout. Maybe a motif's not the word. It's an important phrase that we see him, and an important thought that we see the man in The Road think quite often is whether or not he'd be able to take his son with him when the time came, because obviously he's been sick throughout the entire story, and he knows that ultimately he will overcome him. And so one of the biggest mental struggles that this man has throughout the entire book is asking himself whether or not he'd be able to show his son mercy and not leave him alone, in this wasteland after he was gone. And so clearly he is not, ultimately able to. But this is one of the strongest, individual phrases, I believe. And again, this links back to being able to really, pack a lot of punch with emphasis. A long still frame here. I think I hover on this for several seconds. Just that individual can you statement. Just because I see it. I'll go back to it. Yeah, right there. It's such an important thing, and it packs such a punch. And it's relatable as well. And then I immediately after that fade to black. Or not fade to black, I cut to black. And then pop into another one of these, text boxes that has all the individual words pop up. And so this is, again, a difficult trick to actually implement simply because it takes so much time to set up. But it provides the final cap, I believe, on the segment of this essay that's dwelling on, the road as a negative story. And I wanted to sort of tie it up nicely with something like this.
To die.
And so you can see here, individual words again, words like die and think later on get enlarged and, turned a different color just for the extra emphasis. And so now that I've covered, the beginning part of this essay, which is really mostly a discussion of, how the essay is sad, I'll move into my own analysis of the story, or the segments of the essay that are my own analysis, and how I recorded those. So interspersed throughout this project, there were several of these frames that were simply me discussing the poem itself. And this first one is mostly me suggesting that the story might not be, a story about sadness, as the first three quotes would have you believe. Instead, it might be an exploration of happiness. And so I use these sparingly, simply because I don't want there to be long stretches of time where, it's simply me talking about my project or talking about my idea. I think that it's better, especially with something short and impactful like this, to show rather than tell. But it was important, just to simply communicate this idea and get it across in a very brief form. And so I actually used stock footage here that I found online. I thought it was fitting simply because, again, the road is such, snow is such a huge part of the story and such a reoccurring item that I thought it was fitting. And so for this, usually these would take about, 10 to 20 seconds just to simply get an idea across to, the listeners. And then after that, I would go immediately into a series of quotes, and examples and pictures and videos and whatnot to help back up this idea. Excellent. So after that brief discussion that I have inside the video, I move on to another series of 3 quotes that help support this idea that maybe it's not such a sad story. And the first one here you can see is when they find the apples, and I see that as being one of the first indicators in the story that maybe not everything is going to be for the worst at all points. And so then moving on for this, this is the point where they find the bunker in the story. And so the man says, "I found everything." And that's such an important, and concentrated quote that conveys so much emotion, that everything, after so much desperation, that, I felt that it was, necessary to include it in here. And then excited towards the sun, he says, "Wait till you see." There's so much raw emotion in there that I felt that it would be perfect for something like this, where I'm trying to go for the short, impactful quotes that sort of, support the idea that this book is actually happy and contains happiness in it. And then for the final quote here, I move into another one of these text sequences that discusses, in my opinion, one of my favorite parts of this story, which is actually him finding the sextant on the boat. His last link to humanity, maybe you want to call it. And so by this one,
Struck by the beauty of it, it was the first thing he'd seen in a long time that stirred him.
so you can see with that one, this one actually bothers me a little bit because I was not able to record the quote perfectly in sync with the text, simply because the pacing would either be too fast for the text, it would be unreadable, or the pacing would be too slow for my voice and it would sound, non-human. It would sound like I was reading far too slow. And so I tried to go the middle road and simply record myself speaking a bit faster at the beginning and maybe a bit too slow at the end. And I think it worked. It worked well. But again, this is another one of those parts where I highlight the 2 words that I think really convey the most important ideas in here. This word beauty and this word stirred. Simply because that's not something that you see throughout the rest of the book. It's so much a book about survival that you hardly stop to think about beauty or being stirred or moved in any human sense. Even though that's what 99% of novels today focus on. This is not something that's in the road as much, and so seeing it here indicates that there's still some hope for that idea of us trying to satisfy that human craving for curiosity. And then with this segment here, again, there's more stock footage, layered on top of about 20 seconds of me discussing this idea before. So whereas in the previous one of these, I presented the question that maybe The Road is a story about happiness, here I'm asserting it after those quotes and saying, yes, this is definitely the case, and I will back it up. And in this case, I back it up instead of with quotes. I draw from the movie. And in my original version of the e-poem, I had about a minute-long scene where the man was handing a Coca-Cola to the son, which is one of my favorite parts in the movie and in the book. But in the revised section, I felt that was too long. So I trimmed down the Coca-Cola scene to 30 seconds, and instead I added another 30-second scene in there as well to help break it up and provide more evidence in a more concentrated form. You can see that a lot of this video is about trying to convey a lot of importance in a very concentrated and efficient manner. That was one of the main things I focused on here. And so now I'll cut to the 2 different scenes that I used from the movie. So here you can see the scene that I chose from this movie, which is the man handing the boy a Coca-Cola that he's found. There weren't many editing tricks that I had to use here. I did have to change the audio levels to suit the actual audio essay itself. And you'll also notice that I faded the music out behind it so that it didn't distract from the story itself, but was still there so that it provided that continuity and it didn't feel like a break from the rest of the essay. And then after this, you can see I move into the second segment where the boy is asking his new family, quote unquote, I suppose, if they're carrying the fire. Just because that seems like such a happy scene to have finally found, this sort of, new father. It provides a new sort of hope, I suppose. And even though the context for it might be sad, it was one of the happier parts of the story. And so then, as you can see, I move into, I raise the audio levels of the music again and move back into, my last discussion of the book. And so, I do I do something here that I believe really, provides a good capstone for this. And I move into a series of 3 images that I think, sort of capture the happy side of the story, which is when they find the apple, when they find the
Chance
bunker,
we
which
find-
this is actually a scene from the movie itself, and when they find that sextant within the boat itself. Uh, and so yeah, that's mostly a cap of my project. After that, it's simply a still of the name of the book itself with the author's name. And so I believe that that mostly captures what I'm going for with this audio essay. And I believe that you can see that I mainly focus on a few key details within this, which is trying to go for efficiency and trying to instead of trying to appeal to logos in such a short amount of time, which would be virtually impossible and would be poorly researched and poorly supported. Trying to go instead for appeal to pathos, which I feel is an important part of the story anyway. This story is not some sort of logical argument for anything. It's more, exploration of the human condition and trying to find, what our places in an environment like this. And so I tried to mimic this inside my own video by trying to choose, strong, sharp, and short quotes in videos and clips that I believe, emphasize this idea. And so I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope that this has provided, a bit of illumination on maybe the technical side of how I did things, the decision-making side of how I did things and whatnot. I certainly enjoyed this. So thank you very much.